South Korea reported its first coronavirus case the very same day as the U.S., but South Korea has kept its infection and death rates much lower than we have.
They took the virus seriously and they acted quickly.
The government was able to make a very fast move to identify and isolate patients.
Something they're doing is working, so we should be doing that.
In general here, life is pretty normal. Seoul feels just as busy as it always has. There's lots of traffic on the roads, and restaurants and cafes are full of people. There has never been the kind of deep economic damage that other places have had. So it really is an all-around success story. I'm here in Korea to see how Korea is living with the virus more effectively, really, than any other country in the world. We're heading out of town to the headquarters of the Korea Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which is really the frontline agency in containing COVID-19 here. They're really at the center of this incredibly successful year that Korea has had. This is Park Young-jun, the agency's director of epidemiological investigations. He's been working 90-plus hour weeks since the pandemic began. Park was in charge of the government's response to the first major outbreak back in February, which began at the Shincheonji Church of Jesus in the city of Daegu.
The religious sect Shincheonji is at the heart of South Korea's COVID-19 outbreak. More than half of the nation's confirmed cases are found to be linked to its members.
제가 직접 환자를 보는 사람은 아닌데 숫자만 보고 세 자리 숫자 환자가 발생했었을 때의 느낌. 아, 이게 정말 서지라는 표현이 이런 거 아닌가? 큰 파도가 그냥 덮치는 느낌.
With numbers rising fast, Park and his colleagues made a series of decisions that would set the tone for Korea's response to the pandemic. They quarantined everyone who had been inside the affected church building, tested them all, and then set about tracing the contacts of anyone who had tested positive. The approach was aggressive but highly specific, avoiding a widespread lockdown, and the outbreak was under control within a month. There have been other outbreaks since, but South Korea has succeeded for the most part in bringing them under control, while never completely eliminating the virus within its borders.
엘리미네이션은 정말 락다운 하기 전에는 어렵고, 그러면 사회가 제대로 제 기능을 못하고, 사회가 어느 정도 유지되면서 사회생활을 하면서 이것들이랑 같이 지내려고 하면 서프레션, 롱텀 서프레션이라고 저희들이 이야기를 하는데요. 키 메소드는 테스트, 트레이싱, 그다음에 트리트먼트.
Much of that strategy emerged from South Korea's experience with another deadly pathogen, the MERS virus, in 2015.
126 people in South Korea have now been infected with Middle East respiratory syndrome. The MERS outbreak, the biggest outside of Saudi Arabia, has now killed 10 people.
MERS spread mostly within hospitals and wasn't nearly as contagious as COVID-19, but it was much more lethal. 38 South Koreans ultimately died, and the government was determined to be better prepared the next time.
메르스를 마지막으로 겪었을 때 진단이 중요하다는 것을 알고 진단 시약 개발을 위한 여러 가지 인프라 투자를 했고 또 진단에 참여할 수 있는 인력들을 전국에 걸쳐서 우리가 양성을 하고 있었습니다.
Korea ramped up testing much faster than other countries at the beginning of the pandemic. It now has much greater capacity than it needs, and that could help control the virus worldwide.
We are headed out to a satellite city of Seoul to see a company called Osang Healthcare. They've really been on the front line of efforts to test for the coronavirus. Osang has been exporting test kits all over the world since very early in the pandemic, currently working to dramatically increase the availability of rapid tests in particular.
아시아나 그 저개발국 또 아프리카 이런 데는 병원 수도 부족하고 장비도 부족하고 의사도 부족하고 뭐 그런 이유로 인해 가지고 PCR 방식의 테스트가 그렇게 용이하지 않았을 거다. 또 장비가 갖추기 힘든 그런 나라들을 타겟으로 해서 간편 혼자서 그냥 테스트도 할 수 있는 15분에 결과가 나올 수 있는 레피드 키트를 개발을 완료를 해서 지금 생산을 시작을 했습니다.
Osang is currently making 2.5 million rapid tests per week, all intended for export. I suited up to get a look at the production line.
This is definitely one of the cleaner spaces I've ever been to. If you look at the floor, it's just, there's not a fleck even of dust. So the way this basically works is that we have this big roll of very special paper. It then dips the paper into this bath of reagent. That's the stuff that actually makes the test work, makes it sensitive to COVID-19 antigens. And over there, it's cut up into strips. So the test strips then end up in this enormous machine here. And the job here is to make sure there are no problems or imperfections, and then put them in a little plastic housing. A colleague of mine was here earlier in the year, I think in May, and said they didn't have any of this when she visited. So this is all new. It has been designed and implemented with pretty incredible speed. This is the finished product. The test housing is in this little candy wrapper here, and these cost about $5. So the idea is that these tests, which are rapid, can really put a dent in the pandemic by giving a lot more people much faster and cheaper access to testing, which has been such a bottleneck in so many countries.
The second main component of Korea's virus strategy, and arguably the most important, is contact tracing, verifying the movements of COVID-19 patients and determining who they spent time with. This is also where applying lessons from Korea to other countries becomes a little more complicated.
I don't know where to go from here. Let me see.
Epidemiological.
Yeah.
So we are at the City Hall in Incheon, which is a port city just west of Seoul, and we're going to meet one of their contact tracing team to understand what happens when there is a confirmed case.
Jang Hanaram is a military doctor who leads the 6-person tracing team for this city of 3 million. It's painstaking, incredibly time-consuming work. For the first month or so of the pandemic, Jang slept in the office, and his hours are still very long.
So when you do get a confirmed case, what is your system for tracking all the contacts?
1차적으로 기초 역학조사를 수행을 해요. 이 환자의 인적 사항이라든가 아니면은 어떤 임상 증상이라든가 다른 확진 환자의 어떤 접촉력 같은 역학적 연관성이라든 것들을 판단을 하고 우리에게 GPS 들어온 정보가 좀 다르다라고 하면 거기에서 이걸 바탕으로 다시 재조사가 이루어지는 것이고요. 당장 어제 점심에 먹은 것도 기억을 잘 못하고 며칠 전에 누구를 만났는지에 대한 기록은 굉장히 부정확할 수밖에 없는데 그런 것들을 심층 역학조사를 하면서 도와주는 거죠.
Contact tracers in Korea have access to a huge amount of data, whether that's credit card transactions, CCTV, GPS from telecommunications companies, and that allows them to determine with immense accuracy exactly where someone was and when. Now, that's a very potent epidemiological tool, but as you can imagine, raises all kinds of privacy concerns.
프라이버시에 대한 것들을 제공을 함으로 인해서 결국에는 내가 내 사랑하는 사람, 그 다음에 내 주변 사람, 친구, 지인들을 지킬 수 있다는 것에 대해서 어느 정도를 공감하는 분위기가 만들어지는 게 가장 중요하지 않을까 생각을 합니다. 네.
문화적인 부분에 있어서는 아무래도 국민들이 정부 정책 시책을 좀 믿어주는 부분들이 있기 때문에 민감 정보가 안전하게 관리될 거다라는 믿음이 있기 때문에 큰 저항감이 없이 활용되고 있을 걸로 여겨집니다.
That's not to say everyone here is happy with the system. Jang told me that he sometimes encounters resistance to his investigations. He blames one particularly uncooperative subject for a significant outbreak in May.
동선을 속이고 본인이 실제로 만났던 사람들 또는 본인이 방문했던 지역에 대해서 그러니까 특히나 한국 사회에서는 어떤 낙인 찍히는 것에 대한 두려움이 사람들이 굉장히 크거든요. 현재도 마찬가지고 저희가 역학조사를 하는 데 있어서 조금 어려운 부분 중에 하나가 그거예요.
As successful as Korea's strategy has been, this stigma around the virus seems to have been a source of real hardship for some. I got a glimpse of the phenomenon while speaking to a restaurant owner in Itaewon, a vibrant area for nightlife in Seoul. Linus Kim has lived in Korea for almost a decade and owns a restaurant called Linus Barbecue. I asked him if he knew anyone in Korea who'd gotten the virus.
I just can't reveal who. Yeah.
Really? So people don't want to
Oh, of course not. It really was a witch hunt. Like back in April, it was widely thought if you had COVID that it was grounds to be terminated from your job. Oh my God.
The stigma has hurt the bottom line for Linus and other business owners in Itaewon. In May, there was an outbreak that began in a nightclub here, and customers stayed away from the whole neighborhood for weeks. It's not clear when it will fully recover. Nemo Kim, who owns Crown B Bar, says he's been managing thanks to low overhead and a loyal clientele, but business is still very tough. Like if you had a virus case here at this bar, people wouldn't come back to the bar, right?
We have to close down.
Completely.
Yeah.
Like you would go out of business, you think, if you had a virus?
Of course. The thing is that it's the mindset of people, like they will know
That you have the virus here.
yeah, then I don't think they will come, you know?
As difficult as this year has been, Linus told me that as an American expat, he's been impressed at Koreans' ability to take the pandemic in their stride.
South Koreans particularly are just so used to these life-threatening, like these things that would normally paralyze any other nation. Even if things are like not doing well in Itaewon or you know somewhere, there's another part of Korea where it is business as usual. I know there will be a day where things kind of level off, and you know, I just hope it's sooner than later.
I visited South Korea in early November, and in the weeks since, we've seen how the virus can re-establish itself even when it seems to be under control.
620 new cases have been confirmed, a 9-month high. Seoul is bearing the brunt.
As the end of the year festive season gets underway, people have been told to cancel their plans.
We don't yet know how this outbreak will play out, but it's clear the authorities are concerned. Social distancing rules have repeatedly been tightened in and around Seoul, and there are now more restrictions on daily life than there have been for most of the year. During my visit, though, society was still quite open, and I went to an event that showed me how Koreans were adapting to their new normal. We're here at Jamshid Stadium in Seoul for a playoff game between two of the most popular teams in the Korean Baseball League. And as you can see behind me, there are spectators. Spectator sports are back. Capacity is limited. There are all kinds of other rules around things like wearing masks. There is a gate set up where everyone coming in has to scan a QR code. That's something everyone in Korea has on their phone. It's for contact tracing. So you scan the code, it goes into a system, and then the government ultimately has a record of everyone who was here. Every other seat in the stands is actually taped off, so everyone has to sit staggered. The chanting has been limited somewhat because the authorities don't want people yelling a lot and potentially spreading droplets. It is a sporting event, people are here, life goes on, but it's different, it's changed. No one would mistake this for the pre-coronavirus world.
제 생각에 한국 모델을 그대로 도입하는 것은 그런 나라는 많지 않을 거라 생각을 합니다. 앞서 말씀드린 IT 시스템도 있어야 되고 그에 동의하는 법적인 제도 장치도 있어야 되고 국민들 동의도 필요하고 그런 것을 다 갖춘 나라가 많지 않을 거라 생각하기 때문에 쉽지 않을 거라 생각하는데 그러나 각 부분적으로는 다른 나라 가져갔을 때 바로 쓸 수도 있고 크게 도움이 될 수 있는 것도 몇 가지 있다고 생각합니다.
기본 전략은 이렇게 갈 거고 백신 나오면 다른 상황이 펼쳐질지 아니면 그 지속 기간이 얼마 되지 않을지는 그때 돼봐야 될 것 같고 그 부분도 준비하고 있을 거라고 생각합니다.